10 chapters of the Inner Game of Tennis. And then because of my experience with Vipassana meditation and how much it like totally keyed into the lessons in that book, as well as kind of helping to bridge it really directly into training and having it available like in your everyday life so that you're practicing all the time instead of like just at the gym. I'm going to be trying to bring that into this as well. Did you find the entire PDF of the Vipassana book? Okay, so I'll definitely be posting the name and link. It's $7 for the Vipassana book. It's really digestible. It's not super complicated. I had a really hard time trying to get into meditation for a long time, but then Vipassana as a technique actually really, really helped me in terms of being able to put it into practice in a daily, easy way. It's not easy in the sense of like, oh, this is so easy, but it's easy in the sense of like, just stand on this board, and when you fall off the board, get back on the board. Like really simple kind of thing. So I'll start by asking everyone, and I guess we'll go in order of appearance. So Mark, you go first, and then Mary and Pri, you go, and Yvonne will finish with you. But what are you kind of hoping to get out of this? I don't even know to call it a program because that sounds really official, but what do you hope to get out of this reading group? So Mark, you go first.
I have read The Inner Game of Tennis already, and it was really exciting to me to see it. Like even just like I read it when I was at a family reunion and applied it playing croquet. And it was really exciting to see. I've noticed I play the other games that he talks about all the time, and I just want more freedom, just better mastery of the ideas in the book. So that's what I want. Nice. I do know other people that want that too. Yeah.
Mary and Pri?
You want to go first? Go ahead, babe. All right. Well, I try to do my own mental training. I've been using Headspace for about the last year, and it's done a lot for me, but I feel like when I have like a group setting or like buddies and accountability, that I tend to just like get a lot more momentum and have a lot more follow through. So I wanted to jump on the group for that reason.
Nice.
I think mental prep is really important. Like I've seen it in the few fights that I've had, how it's impacted who I am in the moments in the fight. But then I realize it's one of the least trained things that I do. Like I will go in and throw hundreds of midline kicks and practice my technique. But the mental prep is so much a part of the fight, and I give much less time to that piece, and it really, I think, can make or break me as a fighter.
Yeah.
So I have developed some practices. Like I do keep a Muay Thai journal, and I write specific things down that I can review, and I do some visualization, but like it's very intermittent. So I just thought it would be great to hop on and see and learn and try and like do it with a group too.
Nice. And Yvonne, how about you?
Well, I think, like I mentioned, I'm injured, which I think has been like the biggest mental training ever, just because you go through so many like stages in there of like, I'm never going to get any better. I'm just, I'm never going to be able to fight Muay Thai again. And like, I have like all those thoughts. And so I'm hoping, like I might not be able to like, train right now, but my body, but like I can train my mind, my feet are injured. And then also the group setting, because, not being in a gym, it's very like isolating. Like I don't, I don't have any teammates right now because I'm injured. I'm just like here. So it's hard to like, I'm the only one that is like going to push me to like, to do my rehab and, you know, to keep my mental game up. So thinking, you know, a group setting would be nice. I do miss that from the gym.
Nice. Well, it does seem like all of those are perfectly reasonable in terms of this group working for all of those purposes. So that's exciting. And it also sounds like everyone is really willing to do work, which is actually the like hard part of any of this, but that's really good. I think that for me, when reading The Inner Game of Tennis, what was kind of exciting to me, but also really put confidence in me, is that I didn't feel like it was telling me anything I didn't know. Like, it was things that I had learned over the many years that I've been doing this, but put into pieces that were kind of like confirmation of things that I know have worked, but I've been lazy to actually continue with. So it's kind of what Mary and Pri have been talking about accountability. And it's also what Mark was saying about how he's read it and he wants to see it, like how you can keep applying it. And as well as Yvonne saying that now that you have time to really focus on your mentality, because you can't be physically working in the gym to the same capacity that you were before. I think that what's really cool about the Inner Game of Tennis and its principles, especially combined with Vipassana, is that the whole concept is that you really know something by experiential knowledge. Like, you know it to be true by the experience of its truth. And I think a lot of the things that are being introduced in the book and applied into training, you don't have to force yourself to believe it. Like, you can tell that it's right. And if it's not right, you just like find some other way to address it. But for me in my own practice, I found it really hard for many years on how to start with mental training. Like, I knew it was really important, but when you do, like, if you don't exercise and you want to run a 5K, there are couch to 5K programs that will get you ready to do that race. And it's really, like, you can look it up on the internet and there's like how many miles you should run per week and all these different things that are really like step by step. And even if you know that mental training is really important, there's no like couch to 5K program. There's a little bit of that now. Like Mary, you were saying that you're using that app, which helps guide you. Like, it goes piece by piece. I think that this reading group is kind of the like where to start, and then you individually grow it in terms of like where it needs to go in your personal experiences and directions. But just, is anybody in this group familiar with Vipassana at all? No. Okay. So most of the meditation that people learn and what you're seeing in your app is focusing on breathing. So it's basically trying to get into a like serene, calm, relaxed state. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually really good. The thing about Vipassana that I found really interesting is that what you take as your object of focus is your body and your mind, and you see those as separate things. Those are not one thing. And the point is to kind of separate yourself from I. So super quick breakdown. If you were going to do Vipassana meditation and you're looking at your body, there are 4 postures. So I'm sitting. So this is sitting. Stand up, that's standing. Walking is walking, and laying down is laying down. So those are the 4 postures you can take while doing Vipassana meditation. And basically, you look at your body as though it's like a puppet. Like, it's not you, but it's just, you're looking at it almost like objectively. And so you just sit there and you look at sitting rupa. So you kind of try to see the whole picture of like what is happening with the body. And then, I didn't say rupa. And then the other one is the mind. So the mind is the thing that experiences things. So if there's a sound and you hear it, that's the mind hearing. But it's not like you hearing, it's just the mind hearing. So you kind of get used to this like separation of not attaching yourself to like, I'm hearing this dog bark and it's pissing me off. It's just, there is a sound of a dog barking, there is the capacity to hear it, and so it's being heard. Like sound is happening. And if it's not I'm sitting on the couch, but rather the names are Rup is the body and Nam is the mind. And so Rup is sitting, Nam is hearing, that kind of thing. The reason that's really helpful of just getting used to like objectively and not judging just what a body position is and what a mind experience is that when we start reading the Inner Game of Tennis, he separates it into self 1 and self 2, which are 100% grafted exactly the same as Nama and Rupa, as the body and the mind. So, for example, if you're trying to throw a kick and your hip is not turning over, you just acknowledge that the body's hip is not turning. You're not like, why can't I make it turn? Because that causes tension and that makes you like try harder, and you don't want to be trying really hard. So that's why I think that the where do I start with mental training graphs really well with Vipassana and the Inner Game of Tennis together, those two things. I think that for most Muay Thai practitioners, it's not hard to take concepts from other sports and bring them into Muay Thai because nobody writes about Muay Thai. So we don't really have the like direct examples of Muay Thai all the time. I do, yeah, but not enough. It needs to be like everywhere, right? Does anyone have any questions about that first part or about Vipassana or anything?
No, I think I remember the first time I encountered the idea was when you talked about being on your retreat and the sweeping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, do you want to say what that was so that I don't have to tell the story?
I could take a crack at it. It's just
yeah.
You were sweeping, or maybe you were sweeping your room, but it's like, but you weren't sweeping the room. The body was sweeping, and then the mind was observing the body sweeping, and I was like, oh, okay. It helped me understand that concept.
Yeah, so I think it was like my second day, and I was sweeping the porch, and some of the leaves would sweep off really easily, and some of the leaves wouldn't sweep easily. And I had this epiphany moment where it was like, it does not matter that some of these leaves are harder to sweep. I'm not shitty at sweeping. It's just some of the leaves are like stuck in the wood. So instead of being like, why can't I sweep these leaves? What's wrong with me? Like, all the other cookies have swept porches, like all this kind of craziness that happens in the gym because I allow myself to be crazy. Instead, it was like, some leaves are harder to sweep and they're going to require more passes with the broom. And it was just like calm, like just sweep it more or let them be on the porch, whatever, it doesn't matter. But that kind of like just let it be a longer process than I thought it was going to be is something that I could do in that moment. And if I had tried to do that in training, I would have like a mental breakdown because I have all of these attachments to what things mean in training. Like if I don't block a punch that I feel like I should have been able to block, it becomes a like judgment on my capacity and like what's wrong with me and I've been practicing this and it's not working, blah, blah, blah. And I think that being able to come back to self 1 and self 2 and being able to come back to the Vipassana kind of detachment from self, which causes us to try to take credit for things that are good and blame ourselves for things that are bad. I think that that's what that experience allowed me to realize about training in a really strong way. But then you have to put it into practice. You can't be like, oh, I understand it and now everything's great. Like you actually have to practice it because your mind has like mental paths that it's grooved itself into.
I was gonna log off too.
Sorry?
I was gonna log off too. I thought it was like donezo.
Like done. Everything's perfect. So self one and self two, as described by the author of The Inner Game of Tennis, is basically when you get into like the zone and you have the groove of your body is just doing what it knows to do and you're not really thinking about it. People call it being in the zone. Your body has done muscle memory, repeated actions so many times that it actually knows what it's doing, but your mind gets in the way by trying to do the thing that you're trying to make it do. So that's why self one and self two are very much like the body and the mind, is that your mind is experiencing whether or not you can do the thing that you're trying to do because you've created a purpose for it. And so by your mind trying to take credit for that action and being like, I made that hip turn over, rather than like you having it done so many times that it kind of does that naturally. I think that's where we get really caught up, and that's why mental training becomes really important, is actually to get your mind out of the way of what your body knows what to do, rather than to impose your mind even harder on everything that you're doing. And so the author talks a lot about quieting self one, I think is the mind. We'll have to look at that in the first two chapters to make sure I'm right, but it's 1 and 2. Yeah. Yeah, Kevin's going to jump in. Kevin's my husband, for people who don't know. He's on the other side of the room.
Hey guys, I'm keep my audio off so there's no feedback problem in the room. What I find, I've been watching Sylvie's mental training for, it's 4 years now, about 5 years that you really started to dive into it. What I find really interesting about the self one, self two, inner game of tennis approach is there are all these strategies about mental training that are trying to understand your goals and motivations, visualizing, so many things that are trying to attack the problem at the level of thought. And there's a lot of success to be done with those kinds of programs. Sylvie encountered frustration on almost all of those. You've had success, but also frustration. What's interesting about this approach is it undercuts almost every other mental training approach. That because it's so fundamental about how you experience yourself, if you've had any trouble with other mental training, this goes at a deeper root, which might resolve problems that someone would have. And personally, I've seen Sylvie make huge leaps and bounds going just this next layer down. All the other stuff can still work for you, but there's something about this, maybe because of the way Sylvie saw a connection with Vipassana training, meditation. It's meant to solve not only problems in training, but problems everywhere, like every bit of your existence. So for me, that's what's really exciting about the reading group. I've not read the book, but I've heard Sylvie talk about it many times, so I'm looking forward to reading it too. I'm going to turn my mic off.
Can you fix the camera on Jaideep's paws right now? Which is not too bad. There's Jaideep. So it might be worthwhile to even just try for 5 minutes or something before our next meeting, before we actually start reading the book and meet next week on the first 2 chapters, is just, even if you're like in your house doing nothing, just try seeing the body and what it's doing and not judging it, but just seeing whatever it's doing like it's a puppet, and seeing what the mind is experiencing, which is mostly like the body has sensory organs for receiving sound, sight, things like this, but the actual experience of seeing something, hearing something, that's nama, that's your brain doing things. So just practice separating those things to be able to tell which is nam, which is root. so that when you're actually in training and things like this, you are practiced at recognizing what is self one and what is self two in terms of like, my body is doing that, my mind is doing that kind of thing. Yeah, I'll send a link to the reading material that they offered at the meditation center I went to. It basically breaks down how to do the practice. What's really cool about Vipassana is you don't teach it. Like, nobody teaches you how to do it. You just read what the concept is, and then you have to do it, because it's all about really experiential understanding. So I'll send that so that everyone can read it. And there's something I was thinking that I've now forgotten. Yeah. Well, one of the things about Vipassana and why it's not quite like focusing on your breath is you actually don't want to get too relaxed. If you get into like kind of a dream state, like, oh, I'm totally mindless, that's actually not what you're trying to do. You want to maintain a degree of focus and awareness to be able to just monitor everything, which is really good also for training, because you actually don't want to like blank out completely as you're training. You need to be responding to stimuli, so you need to maintain that degree of focus. It's kind of a like practicing to find the sweet spot kind of thing. Well, that's the harder part to understand.
Mostly about the book. Right?
Mostly about the book. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm looking at some notes that I took last night and seeing if I'm covering things. Oh, so I absolutely want people to be asking questions throughout. You can totally send me questions throughout the week, and I'll address them when we have the calls. You can ask them on the calls. That's great as they come up. But as we're reading, try to put your questions in the context of the reading. I don't think that's going to be hard for anybody, and all questions are welcome, but trying to keep it focused on the reading, I think, is good, rather than like, this guy in my gym hits too hard, what do I do? Like, you can ask that question, but put it in the context of like, is your brain having a hard time with how hard he's hitting, or is your body having a hard time with how hard it's hitting? Like, that kind of thing, I think, will be really helpful. There's also a chat box. Right now we have a very reasonable number of people here to have everyone's mics open. I think that if we get more people, I'm going to have to like mute everyone and then unmute people as they're talking. So there's a chat box if you guys want to use that. If you scroll over on your screen, you should be able to find it, and you can type in questions. If anyone wants to play with that or check that right now. Kevin just tested it. I saw your thing. It popped up for me. Yeah.
So you can ask questions that way without interrupting.
You can ask questions that way. Free and Mary wrote yo. I suspect Mary wrote yo. There's also an ability to share the screen. So if anyone like doesn't get the Vipassana book or anything like that, I'll be putting up screenshots of maybe pages of the book or something like that as we go. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What do you think? Okay. So Yvonne, for you, because you're doing like really a lot of mental focus and not a lot of physical in bringing these together, I think that my advice for you is that when we're talking about physical aspects, you can use these exact same concepts in the practice of recovery. When you're doing Vipassana, in some practices, they do a scan of the body so that you become aware of where everything is. And just being aware of, like, if your foot hurts, it's the same thing of, like, a sound is happening and you're hearing it, but you're not attached to it, is not attaching yourself to the pain. So suffering is happening, pain is happening, but it's not your pain. Like, even if you can stop using my foot hurts, but like the foot hurts or whatever, that sounds very Fight Club, like using the indefinite article, but it actually really helps. In Thai, there's a lot less pronoun usage, so you don't like call things yours. You actually refer to yourself just using your name or just drop I entirely. So in Thai, it's actually much easier because the language doesn't constantly insert this I, me, mine, I'm hearing, all this kind of stuff. You drop that stuff in the language. So I found when I was doing the practice that doing that in Vipassana really helped, and doing that in training really helps. So when I'm not blocking, rather than like I'm not blocking, it's just like the block's not happening. So trying to detach yourself from the experience of the pain, but also being able to sit with it and accept it, is that like it's not a problem, that it's not gone yet, but it's just happening. And like think about the recovery on the mental and the physical at the same time. I think will be helpful.
You talk a lot about Vipassana training, but how about while you're reading the book, how did you experience using the book right away? Is it the kind of thing like after the first chapter you can just start doing this in the gym, like focusing on the book?
Yeah.
Because Vipassana meditation is an accomplished skill.
Yeah.
Not easy at all.
Yeah.
The book is easy.
So I'm using Vipassana practice as like kind of introductory to the mental skills that are going to be used in the book. The book is incredibly practical. You read a chapter and you can immediately apply it to your training. I'd actually be really interested as we start, because all of the examples are tennis, if people want to collect throughout the week their examples of how they used it in their Muay Thai, I think would be really helpful. And maybe we can even write those out and publish them for people to be able to see as a resource. So I think that when the author is talking about how he addresses mistakes with his clients and how he wants them to try to work past them or correct them without it being that like inner coach that's like, make sure that your wrist is this way and your shoulder's that way and all this stuff that like really overwhelms you, but rather kind of letting it happen naturally and observing it. So it's this constant like observe and acknowledge thing that's very fluid rather than like trying to tightly control everything. I think that's the main thing to learn early in the book, and then the examples as we go through kind of reaffirm that over and over again, is that the answer is actually never try harder. It's always try lighter, like calm down and just kind of let it go. There was actually a video that Mary put up a couple months ago where she was training one of her students, and her student is recovering from a hip problem. And Mary was like, don't think about it. Don't be like, here it comes, like just let it go. And it was this perfect like composite moment of how if you overthink the move, it tightens everything and then it just doesn't come out. And I think that this is something that the author reiterates over and over again. And in something like Muay Thai, where there is proper technique, there's beautiful technique, there's power that's trying to be had, there are all of these ways that you're trying to make these constant adjustments. There's a tendency to like clamp down on it and try to control the entire thing, which is the opposite of what this guy who's been teaching tennis for a gazillion years, what he's learned from teaching his students is that putting more and more control on them takes less and less, or gives them less and less confidence in what they're actually able to do. So that's something that I think is immediately applicable from the first parts of the book. And again, what I was saying before, if you can think of examples throughout the week of ways that you've applied it or places that you need to apply it or examples of where you tightened up or something like this, I think would be really beneficial, not only for this reading group, but for anyone who might see portions of it. Kevin says that's also very Thai. This is true. The like whole sabai thing is incredibly like let go of that shit, like just let it flow kind of thing. Thais will always tell you tamachat, which means nature, and they're like just do what's natural, like it should be like walking kind of thing. So we like try to take the right step where our foot is angled this way and all this like detailed minute things, and we end up making it incredibly verbal, which is funny because it's not verbal. Like we're learning something that's incredibly physical and then trying to learn it through like someone explaining it to us. But again, it's that experiential, like when you feel how that kick came out correctly and you don't try to break down exactly how you did it, but just try to feel it again. That's actually how things work much better. Yeah.
I had a strength coach say to me recently, like, what are you doing? Your body doesn't speak English.
Right? Right. No, do it this way. Yeah. Not right. I get a lot of people actually asking me when they're going to come and train in Thailand. They want to go to a camp where there aren't other Farang, but where the coach is going to speak English to be able to explain everything to them. And I'm like, neither of those help you. Like, you don't need your coach to speak as long as you know where to look. But I think that the way that we learn in the West and how we want to digest things through the pedagogy of like verbalizing and having it broken down and all of these different things, we actually don't know where to look or how to see kind of thing. And I think that it's just peeling away a layer of it's almost like a block, like a mental block of wanting things to be explained. And when you peel that away and actually just see it, you take in an incredible amount of information. That if you look at how like little kids learn, they just watch someone do something and then completely imitate it. They're not like, where did your foot go? And like, how do I turn my hip kind of thing? Like they just imitate it kind of thing. And going back to that, because we all learned how to do that when we were learning how to walk and things like this. We all know how to do it. We've just kind of like over intellectualized it as we go. Yeah. Peel back kind of thing, like simplify kind of thing. Yeah. Good. Okay, has everyone gotten the book, or are they going to be getting the book in the next week?
Yeah, I ordered it.
Okay. And Mark's already read it. Yvonne ordered it. Okay. So it's not a lot of reading. Each chapter is quite short, and we're just doing 2 at a time, so it's probably like 10 to 15 pages or something. It's not a lot. So again, send any questions or notes throughout the week if that's something that you want to do, if you're like thinking about it at that moment. And I guess invite people if you know people who would be interested. And hopefully, I think that it's going to snowball a little bit. I think that as we go, we might actually get more people as we go. But I'm excited. I think that this this reading group is a really cool opportunity to take a very personal experience of how you tie yourself up in knots in training is not really something that people talk about a lot. And so taking the very personal experience of like how you've done well doing things like that or how you struggle doing things like that and bringing it to a group and sharing those things, I think has a lot of meaning. Mary and I are in the Female Fighter Collective, which shares like female stories and voices. And one of the most profound things of putting myself online for as long as I have been is that other people being like, yes, I experienced that, has this insanely profound effect of like not being alone in something. It's insane how often we think we're alone in an experience. And I can't name many things in my life that nobody else has experienced. I think it's a very teenage thing to be like, nobody's ever been as sad as I am. Like, nobody's ever loved anyone as much as I am. And that's not true. Like, when you look at kids, you're kind of like, you're 14, it'll be okay. Maybe like brush it off. And that experience is very real. Like, it's not a brush off of an experience because other people experience it. But I think it means a lot that we don't all experience things in isolation. Like, Yvonne, with your injury, I have a chronic injury on my ankle right now. And I just don't think about it because it's like too much to kind of like, I don't want it to get in the way. But if I actually was like, we're working on this together, I think that I would actually deal with it much better. Like, I think that I would actually give it respect and try to make it better rather than just like brushing it to the side because I don't want to deal with it. So I think that the social aspect of this group is going to reveal very interesting things about the process that's described in the book. So I'm excited about that. Yeah.
So we'll meet next week.
Yeah. So we'll meet next week, probably same time.
We'll have to check the calendar.
We'll-
It'll be a Friday or Saturday.
We'll check the calendar, but it'll be a Friday or Saturday. And yeah, thank you guys for coming to the introductory and for being cool people and stuff like that. Thanks for not being jerks.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so I'll send out the link to the Vipassana introduction, and yeah, I'll see